taken place historically. So Ferns, many, many years ago, used to be the capital of Leinster. So Ireland is split into different provinces now, so it's Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Connacht. But years ago there actually used to be more. And they all had rulers or kings, and the king of Leinster at the time was a man called Dermot MacMurrough. So a very famous individual, a bit controversial, he brought the Normans over to Ireland. But Dermot MacMurrough was notorious for fighting with other kings. So it was a rough time to be alive basically. It was kind of the closest you get to a real life Game of Thrones situation. They were constantly fighting to be the High King of Ireland. And Dermot MacMurrough had a special kind of enemyship with a man called Tiernan O'Rourke.
Yeah.
And Tiernan O'Rourke was king up in Breffni, so up towards kind of the Limerick area. It would have been a province back then, but it doesn't exist anymore. Instead of actually facing Tiernan on the battlefield, Dermot decided it would be a good idea to go up to Tiernan's home and kidnap his wife, Deirdre. You can imagine that didn't go down very well. It would have been quite common to actually trade wives, but you'd have to give something like cattle or land in exchange. But Dermot did none of this, so you can imagine Tiernan's quite upset at this point. His pride is a bit wounded, so he decides to chase Dermot the whole way back home to Ferns. And they got into a massive battle, and this is where it all takes a turn for Dermot, and he loses. So he loses the battle, which means Tiernan can now come and take over Ferns and take over his castle. But Dermot's too stubborn for that. He basically decides, if I can't have it, nobody's having it, so he burns it all down. So this is known as the burning of Ferns. He quite literally comes and burns down his own castle, burns down all the town. The only party actually left was the abbey down at the bottom of the village, which actually works out quite well for him because it's the one place that he can hide. The monks are actually quite willing to hide him because he used to pay them with beer. So, not money, but beer. The issue is now that Dermot has no support in Ireland, so he has to go a bit further afield for help. So he heads over to England to look for King Henry II. But when he actually arrives in England, he realises that King Henry II is fighting a battle at the time in France. And by the time he actually reaches the king is too occupied to basically give him any assistance. But he does say to him, if you're willing, go back to England, I'll let you recruit some of my knights, and if they agree to come over, I'll allow it. But he kind of underestimated Dermot because he was very persuasive, and he actually convinced quite a good few knights to come over to Ireland. So in particular, a man called Strongbow. So Strongbow, very famous knight, his real name is Richard de Clare, and he was the Earl of Pembroke and Earl of Straboi. So he had quite a lot of power, but luckily he was after getting into an argument with the king, so he was kind of willing to leave England and make a name for himself somewhere else. So he said he'd come back to Ireland with Dermot and help him take over not just Leinster but all of Ireland. But he wasn't going to do that for free either, because nothing is for free. So Dermot had to offer his daughter Aoife's hand in marriage. So poor Aoife was only 16 or 17 and Strongbow was heading for 50, so definitely not a love match, but it was very beneficial for Strongbow because it meant when Dermot died, all his land in Leinster and in Ferns would all pass to Strongbow, which eventually did happen. And Strongbow had a daughter then called Isabel, who managed to marry the greatest knight to ever live, so that's quite a title. So imagine the greatest knight ever. And he was called William Marshall. He's actually very impressive. So he was the second born son in an English noble family, which basically meant he wasn't entitled to anything. So he had to become a jousting knight, and he was very successful. Pretty much won all his battles. He owned all the land in Ferns and in Leinster through his marriage with Isabel. And he's actually responsible for some of our really famous buildings, so the likes of Hook Lighthouse and Kilkenny Castle and Marshallstown, the Port New Ross, and last but not least, Ferns Castle. So the castle that you see in front of you is 800 years old, built between 1199 and 1224, so roughly 25 years to build. Quite a long time to be waiting on your house, but as you can imagine, they were working with quite limited tools back then. Everything was done by hand. The castle in its day was quite impressive, so there was 4 towers Each tower was 5 stories high, and the building in the centre was made of wood and was 3 stories. Got any questions?
Are we go around? Will we go around?
We're going into it.
All right.
Perfect.
So that would have all connected to that, would it?
It would have.
And all.
Would have been big enclosed.
Oh look, that I didn't know. I didn't expect to see that. All down there.
Now, this here is our moat. It's not actually the original moat because it was filled in. Obviously, the castle evolved over the years when they didn't need a moat any longer. It was all basically just filled in.
What was that for?
The moat is actually, well, most people think it's to stop people walking into the castle, which obviously it plays a part. But the most important thing for your moat is to stop undermining. So have you ever heard the phrase to undermine?
Oh
It
yeah.
actually comes from a method of attacking castles. So you basically dig a big tunnel underneath a person's castle, hold it up with wooden pillars, set them all on fire, and it'd basically make the whole castle collapse because your foundation would be gone. So that's the purpose behind your moat. The original one was actually twice as deep as this and went the full way around.
Oh God, that's like a trap.
It is, indeed. You wouldn't want to fall into it.
No, you wouldn't want to run into it.
Do you know what was in the moat?
No.
Most moats would have been water, but it wasn't quite as
Oh,
present here. So we're on the highest point
water,
of the village.
water.
No river is relatively close. The closest
Yeah.
one is at the bottom of the village. So they had to be creative. So they ended up filling their moat with waste. So everything from the toilet,
Oh
all
God.
their rubbish, everything that smelled bad basically went down into the moat. So
Like
pleasant.
somewhere to put it.
Exactly. There's no bin men back then to take it away.
So they were thinking.
Exactly. Just before we go in, you can see the loophole windows there. So quite smart. If you're on the inside, it's easy to shoot out, but you'd have to have pretty good aim to actually shoot somebody through them. You'll have to use a bit of imagination in this part. 'Cause obviously, quite a lot of damage is done.
And this was on fire then, was it?
It was all blown up with
Imagine the furniture and all.
Oh, it would have been very impressive.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it wouldn't have been as comfortable as today.
Kind of like hardwood and all.
Exactly.
Hard furniture.
This part where we're in now would have been a 3-story wooden structure. So we're actually below the floor here. You can see where the first floor started, up above the basically rougher part of the wall.
Yeah.
But we can see the 3 different levels. This first level here has your embrasures. That's the name for the big openings on the inside.
So it would have
of
been
the
like
window.
lots of stairs and all.
There would have been actually, and we would have came in higher
Steps up.
Yeah.
Like, is that a door or a window?
They're doors.
Doors.
So they actually would have been rooms at the time.
Yeah.
So you can see they match up.
Oh yeah, of course, rooms.
Exactly. You can see over here we have a fireplace, so that's a great hall.
Yeah.
That's actually added by the last family to live in the castle, so the Mastersons.
And what would that have been? A fireplace? A fireplace?
The one on the bottom?
Yeah.
Well, we actually don't know, to be honest. There's 2 highly probable answers. So, firstly, when they were excavating around the castle, they found horse remains and horse-related artifacts just outside. So, odds are it led to your stables. But secondly, it could have been the entrance to a tunnel. So this said that there's a tunnel from the castle down to the abbey at the bottom of the village, which there probably was. It would have been quite common. You needed an escape route. So odds are that would have been the entrance to your tunnel. So either, but we're not 100% sure. Over here we have another fireplace actually. So that square opening up at the very top, that was actually the fireplace in the Lord and Lady's bedroom. And then as you come down, you can see the seated windows. So very few artificial light sources back then. So if you needed to do any crafting or sewing or fletching, just making your arrows, you'd have to sit up in the windows in the daylight. Any questions?
No. That's the tower, was it? Part?
That was another tower.
And that would have been.
We're going to go into the tower now.
Oh.
What?
This is probably the highlight. Because everybody loves to go up and say, but you know, Hook Lighthouse and all.
Yeah.
You go right up to it.
Be nice view from the top.
Yeah. Lots of if your imagination runs wild, you can imagine all sorts, can't you?
Exactly.
With stories and stuff.
Now, this is the first floor of our tower. So the point of this room is basically defence. So you'd have your knights in each window looking out for any enemies approaching.
Oh, look.
So you could fit 2 knights in each opening. So one would have the bow and one would have the arrows, and it just made it quicker. And the bows they were using, probably long bows, which were quite hard to use. They take quite a lot of force to actually draw back. So they started training around 6 or 7 years of age. So basically spent their whole life training to be a longbow knight. This fella here is called a quernstone. So this actually wouldn't have been inside the tower, it would have been out in your outside courtyard. And it's to make your flowers, so you put your grains around the edge. Nice wooden handle in the centre, you turn it then to make your flower. The issue is, you can see there's lots of chips got out of it. Yeah. So the stone would break off into your flour, would have been baked into your bread. So by the end of their lives there was very few teeth left. Not the best of diets, but it's the best they kind of had at the time.
At that time, yeah.
People, they would have basically had a diet of stony bread.
Maybe that's why they call it stone baked and all that, you know, names and the, you know.
Yeah, different names.
Because why do, you know, stone baked, why do they call that stone baked? Because they make it on the stone.
Exactly. As for our walls then, they're obviously quite strong because they've lasted 800 years. Yeah. But the base of them is limestone, so a limestone mortar. Basically they get limestone, grind it down and make it into a paste, and then they'd add in some funny things basically to make it stronger. So eggs would be one thing, horsehair, seashells, and in some cases blood, so it would thicken up the walls and make it strong, but I don't think I'd fancy putting blood in my walls, to be honest. Before we head up the stairs then, I'll tell you a little bit about it. So it's called a trip stairs. So the hint is in the name, it's actually built to trip people up. So the steps are different heights and the ceiling comes down lower in certain points. So the idea is if you lived in the castle, you'd be able to run up it and escape your enemies because they take longer to basically get up the stairs.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's clockwise. So they were nearly all right-handed back then. They'd trained to use their sword with their right hand, which meant if you're inside the tower already coming down the stairs, you can swing your sword a lot easier, as opposed to the people who are attacking the castle who have to try and swing upwards. They did eventually battle this by training left-handed knights. Okay. So they'd send them up the stairs first, and basically they'd be the first people to be killed because they'd have a bit of an advantage because they'd be able to swing their sword a bit easier. I'm not locking these in, I'm just stopping other people coming in behind us. Right, we'll go up the stairs now, just watch your head and watch your feet.
Oh, look.
So odds are this would have been the nicest room in your castle, so it is quite nice that this is the tower that survived. So this is your chapel. As you can see, they put a lot of work into that ceiling, so it's ribbed, groined and vaulted. And in the centre is actually a bouquet of roses. And then if you follow out along, you can see there is actually little rosettes as well, so lots of detail up there. And you can see our heads as well. So there is actually one in each little corner. But the only one we actually know the name of is this guy here. So he's the best preserved and his name is Tutavelius. So if you've ever went tut-tut at anybody, it actually comes from this guy. And he was a demon. As you can see, he is sticking out his tongue and basically mocking the priest who would have sat here in Sedelia. So Tutavelius basically had a job in chapels back then to make sure the priest didn't skip anything in the mass or leave any words out. Because Tutavelius came along, picked him up, put them in a sack, so when the priest died and went to purgatory, all those words then would basically add on a few extra years. So he's basically a tattletale, keeping me line. Over here then is our altar, so a nice east-facing window. This is your piscina, so it would have been used to wash your sacred vessels, and then you will store them in here in your aumbry, which originally would have had a nice wooden ornate door. Odds are there was going to be nobody stealing any of the sacred vessels back then, because the only people allowed in the chapel were the priest and the Lord and Lady's family, so it wouldn't have been for the ordinary people at the time. Does anybody have any idea what those holes are for? It's actually simpler and easier than you think. They're called put log holes, so you put a log from one
Oh, lights.
and it was scaffolding actually.
Oh, scaffolding.
So as they were building the castle, they would basically build in their scaffolding, which was convenient because they were easy to plaster over, but they could re-access them if anything went wrong with ceiling or with the walls, so they could get back up to fix things. So they're thinking about maintenance back then. Finally in here, if you take a look at this window, you can see there's actually 2 holes at the side. So they didn't have the luxury of glass back then. So they had to be a bit more creative. So they put bars across the window. They get animal skin, boil it, stretch it, and cover it over. This meant that there'd be a small bit of light, but more importantly, it stopped your wind, your rain, your cold, especially in the winter. Right. We'll go up to the next floor now. Just watch your head and watch your feet. Watch your step here, the bottom steps with steep. So not quite as nice as the room below us. This would have been quite an impressive bedroom originally because it had a fireplace. So whoever was sleeping up here was someone quite important in the castle. So because we were above the chapel, maybe you're a priest, or it could have been the ladies of the castle because it would have kept you nice and pious being above the chapel. It was actually a split level room, so you can see there is a ledge coming out from the wall. They would have had a platform up above our heads, so they would have climbed up there, and it would have been nice and warm because obviously heat rises. There is actually a quite nice escape route in this room, so odds are if your castle is under attack, your enemies are coming up the stairs, so you're going to shut it and hope they can't get in. And secondly, out here is going to be your wooden structure, so first thing your enemy is going to do is set that on fire. So you're pretty much trapped in your room. Any idea how you get out? I'll give you a hint, you have to go
Up to.
Up through that.
up the chimney.
Oh.
So quite an impressive climb, to be honest.
Oh, jeez.
But you would have had knights up at the top of the tower who would have thrown you down a rope. Should have made it a little bit easier, but still, you'd want to be fairly stuck to want to go up there.
Yeah.
In some castles, there's actually a little hidden room halfway up the chimney, so they didn't have to go the full way up to the top. But the issue is, if it's gotten to the point where your enemies are this far into the castle, you're pretty much lost.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is go up to the top and basically hope to survive to the end of the battle. As you can kind of-
Anyway, it was up.
Exactly. You can kind of tell that most of the fireplace is remade, but we do have this, and this is called a sconce. So this is original, 800 years old, and it was used to hold rush lamps. So not candles like in the movies, because candles are actually quite expensive and quite hard to get back then. Probably only would have had 1 or 2 for the year. So instead they'd go out to the fields, gather up rushes, get the nice spongy inside part, dip it in animal fat, and this is burned for a few seconds. Not as good as a candle, and it made the whole room smell like whatever type of animal fat you dipped it in, but it was a lot cheaper and more accessible. The last thing down here is this flooring. So as you can tell, this is all remade, as are all the rest of the floors in the tower. But this here is actually original 800-year-old flooring. It's quite nice that we still have a little example of it. Right, we will head on up to the top of our tower, so just watch your step.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
It is. A little bit cloudy, but not too bad. Believe it or not, this actually wasn't the top of the tower originally. So you can see that one is a bit higher. This would have been on the bedroom. So you've gone up even more steps to get to the very top. Out that way then, those are your Black Stairs Mountains. The tallest one is Mount Leinster, it's kind of hidden in the clouds. Out this direction is heading towards Enniscorthy and Wexford town, so you can see that pointier kind of hill there, that's
Yeah.
Vinegar Hill.
Oh yeah.
Out this way we have our sea, this head east, and you can see that hill there that's called Carrigrua. The story about Carrigrua, that a giant came along, fell over and landed on the hill and he left a big dip. And then out this way, so Gory's out this direction. You have Slieve Bui over there, which means the Yellow Mountains. And most importantly, in here we have our garderobe. So fancy your word for your toilet.
Oh really?
Yeah,
So they have to go all the way up
all the way up. That or use the bucket.
No.
It was called a garderobe though because it's French for clothes wash. So they would have hung their clothes around the toilet. Because the ammonia got rid of the bugs. So they
Yeah.
didn't mind smelling like the toilet, but they didn't want any insects. You can see as well the abbey is actually down there. You can see the ruins
Oh yeah.
beside the
I
little
see a
cathedral.
bit.
So Dermot McMurray's grave is actually down there. If you're passing through, you can call in and have a look at it.
Oh, I seen it. Yeah, I went down there earlier on.
And then across
Took
the
me a
road-
while to find some of them.
Yeah, it's quite hard, isn't it? There's only one panel and then you have to try and figure out which is which.
That's it. I was kind of like I had to go back and
Yeah.
check it.
Then in the trees is actually mould as well, so if you go across the road and down a little bit further. So before Dermot McMurray was in Ferns, it was a monastic settlement. So Saint Aidan was given all the land around here by a Gaelic lord who he saved in a battle. But when he arrived into the area there was no well, so he got a vision from God to cut down a tree. And when he cut down the tree, the well appeared. So
And what's there's like a castle house over there?
that one is Kiloggy, so not quite as old as this castle,
Yeah.
but it was a family called the Reinhardts. They basically built up the little castle around their house.
Oh, all right.
So this will kind of live. Still
It's-
old.
it's not
a few
old,
hundred
old.
years old,
Alright.
but not Norman anyway.
It's beautiful scenery, isn't it?
It is.
Wow. Gorgeous.
Said earlier, it's the highest point of the village, so
Oh,
pretty much see everything.
beautiful. Breathtaking, I think.
Yeah.
Lovely. It's worth getting to the top, isn't it?
It is.
Very nice. You'll be fit in the summer now, going up and
yeah.
down the stairs.
I'm
Or the
used
steps.
to it at this point.
In the be busy this time of year.
It will be quiet until